Data from CryptoQuant showed that reserves for Bitcoin miners dropped by about 14,000 Bitcoin since last Thursday. Core Scientific sold most of its Bitcoin back in June. Is this a sign that more miners are going to start liquidating their Bitcoin stake amid this crypto winter that we're in? Or is the hype over these declines overblown?
It makes a lot of sense. One, with the state of capital markets and the unavailability really of outside funding that had been abundant for the prior year, uh, at the end of the day, like any other business, Bitcoin miners need to pay their bills. And we mine and earn or produce Bitcoin, but our cost, expenses, and liabilities are in dollars. And at a point in time, we need to match, if you will, that what we're earning in Bitcoin to the expenses that we need to pay would be point one. And so, to a great extent, I think you're seeing what will be a long term trend. As our business matures, we're in fact becoming self financing, self funding, and you'll see mining companies sell sufficient Bitcoin to make sure that they maintain strong balance sheets and pay their expenses when due. The second aspect to it is that it is quite sensible in a turbulent market time, and you've seen this in many industries that experience turbulence, is you go to cash. And so I think what you're also seeing is conservatism at play, where many of us in the industry, looking at the capital markets, looking at the uncertainty probably for a period of time here, it will settle out, no doubt, and it seemed to be beginning to. But when you face turbulent times, you want to make sure that you've built a conservative balance sheet, that you've got resources to ride through those times. And so I think that you're seeing some of that as well, Mackenzie. Certainly that would be the case as it relates to us. We've been through turbulent times in the past at our company. I certainly have a good bit of experience in distressed markets, and it makes sense to build a conservative balance sheet in that kind of an environment.
Can you explain a little bit more about why Core Scientific chose to sell its Bitcoin and what the result of that decision has been? Do you feel that you are now better braced for future volatility?
Sure. It really relates to two aspects of our company. One relates to our growth. And at our last earnings call, one of the things that we mentioned was that we felt that we had sufficient assets and capability on our own balance sheet, our own income statement to fund our growth through 2022, which, as we had said, was to get to a point where we're operating either for our own account or hosted over 300,000 servers. And going to cash, kind of insured, if you will, uh, aided us in making sure that we have sufficient liquid capital to handle the build out for the growth that uh, we had talked about previously with our shareholders. And then the second aspect really just has to do with our experience in these kind of markets, which, as I said, is when you've got a turbulent market, when you're not sure when your ability to raise capital will come back, whether it's equity or debt capital, you create liquidity. And so our view was that it made sense for us to create liquidity to provide, call it an insurance policy, to get through these tumultuous times.
So obviously we're seeing a bounce in prices today. We had positive momentum heading into the weekend. Is this a sign of better times to come for both investors and businesses, or should we be bracing for more pain?
Well, hey, look, I am certainly not a great predictor. Yeah, not that is definitely not my expertise. What I would say is again, I've lived through other types of distressed markets, be it the internet bubble, be it the credit crisis, what have you. And I do think that we have experienced a lot of pressure in the past couple months on the price of Bitcoin as we've seen liquidations of Three Arrows and Voyager and Terra Luna and Celsius. And those are extraordinary events. And you and I have talked in the past about, and I've spoken about a need in all early industries. There seems to be what I've referred to as a consolidation and cleansing phase. And we're certainly going through that. That said, there was tremendous pressure put on the price of Bitcoin by the liquidations that occurred and by these market events. And we've actually been quite pleased at the resilience of Bitcoin, its price, and the Bitcoin network. And we think that sort of the big events, the big bankruptcies have occurred. We're certainly not directly aware of any other what I would call large at-risk situations. And so, if we've worked our way through these big high pressure situations as we have, yet then I think it's fair to say that yes, we'll probably see less pressure on the price of Bitcoin. We'll see more optimism, and with less volatility, you probably get more support.
So, what are the biggest headwinds facing Bitcoin miners right now? Is it the price of Bitcoin, or is it more inflation and the cost of energy?
There's the obvious answer, which is when Bitcoin prices are higher, our business is better, because there is tremendous positive operating leverage in this business. Over certain levels, every dollar increase in the price of Bitcoin is 100% operating income to Bitcoin miners. So, yes, we would all be cheering loudly if Bitcoin were to get back to $35,000, $40,000. There is no doubt about that. Also, clearly, the price of energy matters. But what really matters is productivity. And there is this interesting aspect of Bitcoin and the Bitcoin network in that what we would refer to as the self correcting aspect of the Bitcoin network, which is to say that as prices fall, global hash rate or the competition for the production of Bitcoin decreases as less efficient miners come off the network. As less efficient miners come off the network and global hash rate declines, and it has been in decline more or less over the last month or two, our machines get more productive, and thus the cost of energy, if you will, per Bitcoin produced goes down. So there's a bit of an offset against that ties into Bitcoin price, energy price, and productivity. So what we're really, really focused on is productivity per machine. That said, would we love for the price of natural gas to stabilize? Absolutely, because it does have implications and it does impact margins. I would say that right at its peak, we were all enjoying 80% plus margins in our business. And those margins are probably down to closer to 50% or so across the industry, as best we can tell at this point in time. That said, at current energy prices, it's still a profitable business for Bitcoin mining. It's just not as profitable as it was at higher prices for the for Bitcoin itself and lower energy prices.
Okay, so for Core Scientific, then revenue does outstrip operational expenses.
Yeah, we as a company are profitable at these current levels, if you will, cash flow positive at these current levels is how I would phrase it. As are, I think, pretty much the in the U.S. the entire Bitcoin mining community should be generating cash flow at these sort of levels and these sort of Bitcoin prices. The other aspect that relates to inflation, by the way, also has to do with infrastructure build, because we're somewhat unique in that we develop and control all of our own infrastructure. That the price and inflation for a period of time had an impact. Like, we're happy to see that the price of steel has stabilized. So we build data centers. You need steel to build data centers, and so it's not just inflation as it relates to energy. Uh, there are other products, or if you will, materials that we need. Similarly, the cost of transformers and electrical gear, that those also have implications for the overall profitability of our business. And we're glad to see we've seen much more stability in recent days, recent months, different around than those sorts of inputs, different than energy.
What is the outlook for crypto miners, both Core Scientific in particular and the industry more broadly,
Well, it's
looked like in the
I'm
past 2 months
obviously
amid all of this
highly
volatility?
biased. I'm obviously highly biased. But if you survive this sort of a market environment and this sort of volatility and this sort of tumult, those that survive should thrive. Similar to the credit crisis, similar to the internet bubble. Uh, it's just a matter of surviving. In our case, we're trying to not only survive, but also to build our business. So that's the other thing about this sort of a market environment, right? Is there are a lot of opportunities that present themselves, and folks like us, and I'm sure some others, are trying to take advantage of the opportunities to build our business at what we would consider to be very compelling value, so that when we come out of this, we're not only strong, but we're also bigger, if at all possible. So we view this kind of a market. Look, it's a challenge, and you need to work through it, but it also presents great opportunities to build.